Shalom, welcome to our daily class on Rabbi Nachman and Patreon. And we're going live today on Facebook because the concepts that we're looking at in Torah 58 are very interesting. They're based on a Zohar we learned yesterday. And it's basically a bunch of dots and dashes. You know, it's like a binary code that one produces three and one goes up between two and three nurse into one. And so these concepts in Zohar, they're expected to be understood on many levels. That's why they're written the way they're written. Something that's from Zohar is written in a very condensed way in order that every generation will come along and understand it according to their kalim, to their vessels, and their intellect, and their practical application of this amazing document that we have called the Zohar. Now, Rabbi Nachman explained it that Moses is the one who produced three. What is the one? Moses. What is the three? That he had the zchut of the man, the bread from heaven, the bear, the well of Miriam that followed them around in the desert, and the miracle of the clouds of glory that protected them from getting sunburned out there in the desert for 40 years. You can imagine. Okay, so that's one of the examples, and then Rabbi Nachman tells us that Moses' soul includes Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that all three of those forefathers are included in his soul. There's some kind of unification of personality going on there. And of course, when we look at the Sfirot, the spiritual powers in the soul, we see that it is that way, that we have a part of us is Chesed, a part of us is Gevurah, a part of us is Tiferet, or truth, beauty, and all three of those are bound together into a soul. And Moses merited to all of them. Okay. And that we treated that as a leap into the idea of the soul of Messiah as this soul that connects to all the other souls. Now look where we go. Today's piece, he starts off with Koach Shaya Klalu Ba'avot, and then the power that Moses had. This power, he was able to use it, Lochem Keneged Amalek, to fight against the Amalekites, who was a descendant of Esav, who became the arch enemy of the Jews and eventually became the progenitors of the whole Persian Purim affair, right, which Rabbi Nachman says is another model of redemption. And Moses had this power because he had all these other souls included in him. Okay, and this is the idea of Harev Nokemet Nakam Brit, a sword of revenge. Will revenge his covenant. And this is exactly where a lot of people stop. The vengeful God, the vengeful people, the vengeful warrior. There's something about revenge. People they love it because revenge, of course, is really an attempt to balance justice, whether it's from God or from man. That people want justice. And we're built with wanting justice. Even the most unjust people, if they watch a movie, they want justice. But when you talk about religion, oh, wait a minute, religion is all about love and peace and meditation and God and all these wonderful things that we need. But vengeance? Nobody's allowed to go out and seek revenge. But we see here that Moses had this sword that was a sword of the covenant. Now, ask yourself a question. Every mafia movie you ever saw, what happens? There's a couple of families, they get together, they make an agreement to split up the turf, and then somebody breaks the agreement, and then there's a cycle of revenge, and then you got a lot of blood, and then they work it out in the end, and they play some old-time classical music, and you're supposed to be touched by something over there, which is really just the glorification of violence and people who can't keep a covenant. And God said, I'm going to make a covenant with the Jews. They're going to keep my covenant. And God told Abraham this. You're going to teach my covenant to your children and your children's children, and that's why I'm giving it to you. So it's a multi-generational covenant, this agreement that we have with God. We're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And it means keeping the Torah, and God's going to protect us. It means doing the mitzvot, and God's going to bless us. And all this kind of spiritual calculation, this business agreement between heaven and earth. Okay, so we accepted it, and I didn't have any choice to be. I remember thinking when I was a kid, like, wait a minute, do I have a choice not to be Jewish? No, I was born this way. I can't change it. So there's a reason behind that. Okay, so anyways, this sort of revenge, people don't like to hear about it. Well, it's an interesting thing that it comes right down to everyday modern politics as well. It's happening all the time. Ki ha'avot hem brit. Because the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all had a covenant with God. And they were promised to them. And this is bechinat, zacharti et briti Yaakov et briti Yitzchak va'af et briti Avraham. I remembered my covenant. So God is really behind the revenge of his covenant with us. Those that attack us get attacked. And then when we don't keep the covenant, we end up suffering the other side of the equation of the agreement. If we don't keep the agreement, then our covenant breaks down. If the non-Jews, if we keep the agreement and then the other nations don't like it, like we saw when the Jews came out of Egypt and we were attacked by Amalek for no reason, and we were attacked by the Amorites because they were afraid of us, and so on and so forth, God took revenge. And then part of us feels the justice of it, and part of us just doesn't like the idea of revenge. It's too mafia, right? Well, look what he says. Ki avot hem berit, the fathers with his covenant, and God's going to remember that covenant, and he's going to avenge it. Why does God need to take revenge? Why does anybody need to take revenge when an agreement is broken? A man cheats on his wife. A woman cheats on her husband. How many times have we heard revenge stories there? That's half of Hollywood. Is it because of justice or getting back at somebody, or is it about pain? You cause me pain, I'm going to cause you pain. Now that sounds like kindergarten to me, right? That if somebody causes me pain, I have to look at it in the bigger picture of my life and say, well, maybe I need this pain right now. It's going to help me grow. It's going to help me learn things. But the minute I just throw my pain back at you because you hurt me, then I'm not learning. I'm just living on revenge. And so on it goes with the McCoys and the Hatfields until there's nobody left, in the redneck Georgia. So what do we do? If we don't seek revenge, then we feel like idiots because we've been made fools of by making agreements with people that don't hold them. Like all these peace plans. Have the Arabs stopped throwing rockets at Israel with all the peace agreements? I don't think so. So what kind of peace is there with people that sign a document and then throw rockets? And then the whole cycle of revenge continues. Well, this original setup that we keep living over and over throughout thousands of years, it started with Amalek. When they attacked us for no reason, and they didn't attack the warriors, they attacked the old, the young, and the women. At the end of they attacked the tail end of the camp, as it says in the Torah. And it says that they defiled their own covenant. That means, of course, the sexual activity. That they didn't conduct themselves in honorable ways when it came to that. And then they went after the same thing with the Jews. The Midrash tells us that when the Amalekites would go out in battle, especially against the Jews, if they would kill somebody, they would cut off their organ and throw it up to heaven. As of, here's your covenant, God. Like, is that really necessary? Is that what you do? Does that prove your point that you don't believe in God? Or you don't believe in a covenant with an eternal, infinite being? You don't believe that there's some universal force that has a plan for this planet? So you're gonna shame that God? And it says, Asher karcha b'derech, that they chilled you guys out on the way. In other words, they chilled your enthusiasm. Those are the people that come along and tell you, why are you getting so religious? Why are you learning Kabbalah? Why are you meditating? Why are you praying? Why are you interested? Why? Well, if you're so interested in why, ask yourself the question. Don't ask me. Now, of course, I don't mind if you ask me. That's what I do. Because I've made it a point to learn how to answer people in a nice way about difficult things. And I do this online all the time with people. They call up, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about the Holocaust, and what about reincarnation, and what do we believe in, and what do we don't believe in, and we talk about it. And there's a solid structure behind the Jewish belief system. And now the Rebbe tells us, going back to the Zohar that we just learned, Vahad A'al Ben Train, this idea that one went up between two. Now in Kabbalah, that represents the water of human desire going back to God, because there's two energy flows in the universe, God to man and man to God. That's as simple as that. And the Kabbalah maps the energy flow through our bodies, from head to toe and then from toe to head. And so the idea of going up between two, it represents that power. Now, usually the train are either Netzach and Hod, the right and left thigh, push your sexual energy up to your heart, or the right and left arm that push your emotional energy up to your head. That's the way it flows. Okay, that's a Zoharic interpretation. But Rabbi Nachman takes it to another level. He says, no, the Had is Moses, and he goes up between Aaron and Hor, Miriam's son, in this war against Amalek. And they lift up his arms. And the soldiers see his arms, and they have faith in God, and they're victorious in battle. Okay. And this war, well, is it about faith in God or faith in man? Or can we have faith in both, unified? Well, if you have people that believe in the tradition, in our rabbis, our sages, our teachers, who believe in the concept of prophecy, the phenomenon of God communicating to human beings, well, then, when you believe in the person, you're believing in their belief system, and their belief system is based on the one, the eternal, the creator, and so there's a unification that takes place in our mind and our heart. But if the person I believe in doesn't believe in that, at some point I'm going to be let down. I think we've seen that enough. Okay, but let's go back to this idea, because what we have here, we have these revengeful moments throughout history. We have God seeking revenge on the nations that attacked the Jews. Then we have Moses being the instrument of that revenge in certain wars, and so did Yeshua. He also sought out God's revenge. And then that's happened all the way up until this day. Except the Jews, being who we are, we try not to attack first. We, as the Golda Meir said, it's better they attack us first. And I'm not sure that's an accepted principle, believe me, because you get people killed doing things that way. But there's also the idea of Moshiach fighting the wars of God. Now, this is the man of peace. He's supposed to be the Prince of Peace, Sar Shalom in Hebrew. The Christians stole the name, but it's our name. And the Sar, of course, is a prince, but it really means an angel at a certain level in the angelology of the heavens, whose job is peace. See, human beings can't make peace. Human beings can agree to disagree, or human beings can agree to agree, but it won't last if there's not a blessing on it. And the blessing that's why we say in our prayers, Vayisim lecha shalom, that God will put the peace on us. Because peace is a very high spiritual state. It's inner peace, it's outer peace, it's peace between ourselves, our lives, our histories, our families, our communities, our nation, the whole world, and even peace with God. So that doesn't come because we're good guys. That comes because we've done the work, and then God blesses you with it. So we have to always understand it's a two-sided thing. We do the work, God gives us the blessing. Now, sometimes you can get the blessing without the work, but it won't last. And this is why all these peace things that we see out there are not working. And we're still at this war. But they've gotten smarter in the media, so they don't call it war, right? And they don't tell you how many people die too often. And they lie about a lot of things to make it not look like war. But it is. It's just fought in a more insurgent way, okay? Now, but the Messiah is supposed to be coming to make peace, and yet we say that first he comes to fight the wars of God. Now, what are the wars of God? Haven't we seen enough of, the trench warfare after 2 world wars? Now look what's happening in Ukraine. Isn't that like a redo? Isn't that like a World War 2.02? The tanks and guns and trenches and some planes and missiles. How much do you solve with all that? What actually gets worked out? Except you learn to hate each other more until the next round of revenge comes around. So the idea of the Messiah is that the fighting of the wars of God is not the fighting over blood and over land. It's fighting over the mind, freeing the mind of man from the external forces. They have names. They're called klipot. They're called the other side. There's thousands of pages written about this. But all of them are basically keeping men, human beings, stuck. And a lot of them are men. There's a few women probably around in the military advisory circle, that's going after the physical revenge. But that's not the real revenge. The real revenge is when your enemy agrees with you on your belief system. When the enemy finally sees that this war is not worth fighting, this war of killing our young people, sending young, beautiful, intelligent, holy, pure young men and women off to kill each other seems to be the most insane thing you could ever hear of. For what? So some rich guys on their yachts can fight it out in cyberspace? So some 80-year-old politicians can exercise the power they no longer have? Why? Well, we know why. Because there's a lot of money behind the scene. But besides that money piece, we're interested in winning the war, and the war is for the heart and the mind of humanity to stop fighting. To agree that we're going to not fight. We're going to work this out without fighting. We're going to find out what's fair. Which land is your land, which land is your land. And if you can't live with it, then you'll have to leave. And in the old days, they didn't kill everybody off. Well, here in Israel, they would just push people, to the borders. And the nations that came in, they would be removed. But the idea of a bloodbath, it doesn't work anymore. And, maybe this little talk, maybe one word of it will reach and enter somebody's heart that can make a difference on the physical plane. But we have to understand that the Messiah is coming. And he is going to fight the war, but it's not a war of blood and guts. The revenge, the victory of the revenge is to win the heart of man from the loser strategy that every war produces. Nobody won any war, ever. And if people say, well, we won World War II. Well, I don't know what you call winning, but maybe 70, 90 million people died. So is that called winning? Because the factories in America got to keep making weapons and the factories in Germany got destroyed. So that makes it, we won because we get to produce more weapons. We won because the dollar is stronger than the mark. Is that what it's about? I think it's shameful. I think it's shameful, and I told my kids from the day one, you can go to the army, you can serve the Jewish people, but I don't want you carrying a gun and going out and shooting anybody. Because that doesn't produce any victory. That just produces more revenge, more hatred, more anger, and we continue this cycle. And Moshiach is here to break that cycle. And Moshiach will come to stop it, to wake up the minds of humanity that we don't need to fight wars to find solutions. The solutions are not found by fighting. Solutions are found by real, honest communication. And so far, well, it's very hard to find people that are going to really come through on their covenant. So it's about the covenant. It's about the agreements that we make and standing up to them, being noble about it, and then knowing how to react if the people that we make covenants with, they can't stand on it. Then, well, we say, well, we're not going to make any more covenants then with you. We'll have to communicate in another way. So I think there's hope here, a lot of hope for the future, because humanity is waking up. Humanity is getting smarter. And more parents are not going to send their kids off to war. And really, when you see those pictures of what people are fighting for, what are you fighting for? You look at the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War and all the wars in Central Europe. I mean, what is it about? A political ideology that doesn't even stand up? No, I don't think so. It's about a much different picture that's changing as we speak. And God willing, we're going to see it in our lifetime. Humanity's going to have a quantum change in our attitude about each other and about how we solve problems. And this is going to bring in the new era that everybody's waiting for, that we call messianic. Whatever name you give it, it's not even about religion. It's bigger than religion. It's about humanity reaching its true status and potential. God bless you all. We'll continue on our Patreon talks and in our daily reading and learning of Rabbi Nachman. You can support us on Patreon. You can look for us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Insight Time, or on Web Yeshiva. And, well, there's still more to do. God bless you all.